Right now, your body is actually manufacturing something that takes exactly 90 days to build.
Right.
And the choices you made 3 months ago, like what you ate, how much you slept, even how long you sat at your desk, those are determining whether that biological package survives its ultimate journey.
It's incredible when you think about it.
It really is. So welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are talking directly to you, the listener, about a scenario that, so many people find incredibly stressful.
Yeah, receiving that semen analysis.
Exactly. It feels like a confusing, just permanent failing report card.
Yeah.
If you are trying to conceive, looking at those numbers can feel completely devastating. But our mission today is to entirely debunk the myth that sperm health is this fixed, immutable baseline.
Because it's not. It is the absolute definition of a temporary snapshot, but it's disguised as a final grade.
Right.
We're looking at a biological landscape that is entirely dynamic. It's highly responsive to environmental changes.
Okay, let's unpack this. Using clinical materials and protocols from the Berkeley Center for Reproductive Wellness, we're going to decode exactly what a semen analysis measures.
And we'll get into the actual cellular mechanics, too.
Right. Why sperm degrade in the first place, and lay out an evidence-based 3-month action plan to fundamentally rebuild male fertility. Because, before you can fix a bad grade, you have to actually understand the subjects you're being tested on.
Precisely. So when you look at that lab report, the metrics are governed by the World Health Organization Laboratory Manual.
The WHO.
Specifically the 6th edition. That's what dictates the strict reference limits and the methodologies that clinics use globally. And the analysis basically boils down to 4 critical measurements, starting with sperm count.
Which is actually 2 different numbers, right?
Yeah, count consists of 2 related but very distinct numbers.
You've got concentration on one side and then total count on the other.
Exactly. So concentration measures the density, like the number of sperm per milliliter of semen.
Yeah.
And the WHO lower reference limit for that is 16 million per milliliter.
Okay.
Then you look at the total sperm number. That's the total payload in the entire ejaculate. And that baseline sits at roughly 39 million.
Which sounds like a massive number.
It does, but human reproduction is notoriously inefficient. The journey through the female reproductive tract involves massive attrition. So you need those high baseline numbers just to ensure a statistical probability that, maybe a few hundred sperm actually reach the fallopian tubes.
Yeah, having a massive fleet really doesn't matter much if the vehicles don't run.
Yes.
Which brings us to the second metric, right? Motility.
Yes.
And this isn't just a binary, are they moving or not, is it?
Oh, far from it. Motility assesses the actual quality of the movement. I mean, sperm cell just vibrating in place or swimming in tight little circles, that's functionally useless for natural conception.
They're not getting anywhere.
Exactly. The lab is specifically looking for forward progressive motility. The sperm has to travel a significant distance through a highly viscous, really challenging environment.
It's an obstacle course.
It is. And it requires a tremendous sustained output of cellular energy from the sperm's mitochondria, which are wrapped entirely around its midpiece.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so if those mitochondrial engines are compromised, say by inflammation or chemical toxins, the forward propulsion just fails.
Wow. And that structural aspect naturally leads into the third metric, which is morphology, the actual physical shape of the sperm cell.
Right, the morphology.
I know a lot of people get their results back, see a normal morphology score of something like, 4%, and they just completely panic.
And it makes sense why they'd panic. I mean, if 4% sounds catastrophically low if you're thinking about it like a high school math test.
Right, a 4 out of 100 is a terrible grade.
Exactly, but human sperm are naturally pleomorphic. That means they naturally occur in a wide variety of shapes, and honestly, many of them are defective. The threshold for normal is just incredibly strict.
How strict are we talking?
Well, a healthy sperm requires a perfectly oval head containing an intact acrosome, which is the chemical payload needed to dissolve the egg's outer shell.
Okay.
It also needs a streamlined midpiece and an uncoiled tail. If the head is misshapen at all, it physically cannot penetrate the egg.
Got it. Then we hit the fourth metric, which, looking at the literature, suggests it's the most complex and, honestly, often the most overlooked. Sperm DNA fragmentation, or SDF.
Yes, SDF.
This entirely shifts the focus from how the sperm looks or swims to the actual genetic payload inside, right?
It does. What's fascinating here is that sperm DNA fragmentation measures the literal breakage existing within the sperm's DNA strands.
Literal breakage.
Yeah. To fit inside the microscopic head of a sperm cell, human DNA has to be so tightly coiled and packed down. Think of it like compressing a massive folder of critical documents into a tiny zip file.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. And if that zip file gets corrupted during transit, it doesn't matter if it reaches its destination. You can have a sperm that looks structurally perfect under a microscope, and it swims aggressively straight.
But if the code is bad.
Exactly. If the genetic code inside is shattered, the embryo just will not develop properly.
So it's really the hidden variable.
High fragmentation is routinely the hidden culprit behind cases that get aggressively labeled unexplained infertility. It's intimately associated with recurrent pregnancy loss and even repeated failures in assisted reproductive technology.
Like IVF.
Yeah, like IVF, where the sperm's natural selection barriers have basically been bypassed by the doctors.
Okay, let me try to pull all four of these metrics together into a single framework. Let's say human reproduction is a high-stakes logistics company.
I like this.
And sperm are your fleet of delivery trucks. Count as simply your inventory, like, do you have enough trucks on the road? Motility represents the engine power and the steering. Are these trucks aggressively driving down the highway? Or are they just broken down in the parking lot?
Right, we're driving in circles.
Exactly. Morphology is the aerodynamic structure of the truck itself. Does it have all its wheels? Is the front bumper shaped to actually break through the warehouse doors?
I definitely see the parallel here.
But SDF, sperm DNA fragmentation, that's the integrity of the highly fragile, incredibly precious cargo locked inside the back of the truck.
Yes.
If that package is smashed into a million pieces during transit, it literally does not matter how many trucks you dispatched, or how perfectly aerodynamic they were, or how fast they drove. The delivery is just a complete failure.
That perfectly illustrates the hierarchy of the metrics. You can absolutely have millions of fast, beautiful trucks delivering smashed cargo.
Right.
So now we have to explore why the cargo gets smashed in the first place.
Let's get into the mechanisms of that. Why does the fleet break down?
Well, sperm are uniquely, almost dangerously sensitive to the environment in and around the testes.
How so?
Most human cells are tucked safely away behind dense layers of tissue, fat, and bone, and they contain cytoplasm, which is full of cellular machinery that repairs damage.
But sperm are different.
Very. Sperm are stripped down for speed. They have almost no cytoplasm, which means they have virtually no internal repair mechanisms.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when they take damage, the damage stays. And the primary driver of this damage is oxidative stress.
Okay, we hear the term oxidative stress thrown around constantly in health spaces. Walk us through the actual mechanism. What is physically happening to the cell?
Oxidative stress is essentially biological rust. It happens when there is an imbalance of reactive oxygen species, often called free radicals in the body.
Free radicals, right.
Yeah. Free radicals are these highly unstable molecules that are missing an electron. Because they're unstable, they violently steal electrons from the nearest available source.
Just ripping them away.
Exactly. And the membrane of a sperm cell is heavily composed of highly delicate fats, specifically polyunsaturated fatty acids. So the free radicals attack those fats, literally tearing the cell membrane apart and causing the DNA inside to snap.
And what triggers this biological rust? I mean, some of the physical hits in the literature make total intuitive sense. Smoking, vaping, heavy binge drinking, exposure to heavy metals or industrial solvents.
Right. Those are actively introducing toxins into the body.
But I have to push back on one of the items repeatedly flagged in the data. Sitting.
Yes, sitting.
Are you telling me that simply sitting in an office chair is creating this level of cellular damage?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of human anatomy, you have to look at the physics of thermoregulation. The testes are located outside the body cavity for a very specific evolutionary reason.
Temperature control.
Exactly. Spermatogenesis requires an environment roughly 2 to 3 degrees Celsius cooler than your core body temperature. The body actually has a built-in radiator system called the pampiniform plexus. It's a network of veins that cools the blood before it reaches the testes.
And sitting down neutralizes that radiator.
Sitting down for 8, 10, or 12 hours a day just folds the radiator away. It traps body heat in the pelvic region.
Oh, man.
Think about combining that with tight compression underwear or resting a hot laptop directly on your lap. You are structurally overheating the local environment.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It is. When you combine that localized heat stress with systemic inflammation, which is driven by poor sleep, chronic emotional stress, or metabolic issues like insulin resistance, you create an environment just overflowing with free radicals. You're quite literally cooking the fleet.
Here's where it gets really interesting. You've outlined the damage, but the Berkeley Center protocols keep pointing to a highly specific 90-day intervention window.
Yes, 90 days.
Why exactly 3 months?
Because of the biological timeline of spermatogenesis. You see, women are born with a finite reserve of eggs, but men continuously manufacture new sperm cells.
Right.
However, it is not an overnight assembly line. From the moment a germ cell begins dividing in the testes, it goes through meiosis, structurally develops a tail and a midpiece, and finally transits through the epididymis where it gains the ability to swim.
The whole journey.
The entire process takes about 70 to 90 days.
Meaning you are perpetually 90 days away from a totally new generation of cells. The biological package you are delivering today was actually built 3 months ago.
That is the crucial paradigm shift. The semen analysis you hold in your hand today is a historical document.
Wow, historical document.
It reflects your physiological state, your stress levels, and your diet from a season ago. If you aggressively change your internal environment today, the sperm that are just beginning to form will develop in a lower inflammation, lower heat environment.
So let's talk about execution then. Phase 1 of this 3-month biological hack. Month 1 is essentially triage, right?
Month 1 is entirely about stopping the bleeding. You have to remove the primary sources of oxidative stress, or honestly, no subsequent intervention will work.
Right, you can't build a house on fire.
Exactly. Meta-analyses, like the extensive data published by Dr. Or Sharma, consistently demonstrate how cigarette smoking and vaping profoundly reduce semen quality.
What's the mechanism there?
The cadmium, lead, and nicotine cause systemic vasoconstriction. It basically chokes off the oxygen supply to the testes and floods the environment with reactive oxygen species. That has to stop immediately.
The same goes for binge drinking, right, which causes massive inflammatory spikes. But what about the heat and lifestyle factors?
You have to eliminate the localized heat. No hot tubs, no saunas, no cycling for long distances, and tight gear for this 90-day window.
What if you work a desk job?
If you work a desk job, you must stand up and walk around briefly every single hour to re-engage that blood flow and cool the local tissue. You also have to aggressively protect your sleep architecture.
Because of hormones.
Yes. Sleep is when the endocrine system regulates testosterone and the cascading hormones required to drive sperm production.
Okay, so you've stopped throwing rocks at the delivery trucks. You've cleared the road. Now, how do we rebuild the fleet? Moving into the rest of the 90-day window, the sources point to diet and highly strategic supplementation.
They do.
I want to skip the basic eat your vegetables advice because, our listeners already know what a Mediterranean diet looks like on a plate. Biologically, why do these specific fats and proteins matter to a sperm cell?
It comes right back to that delicate cell membrane we discussed earlier. The sperm's lipid bilayer is heavily reliant on omega-3 fatty acids, specifically DHA.
Okay.
If your diet is overflowing with ultra-processed foods and inflammatory omega-6 seed oils, the sperm membrane becomes rigid. It loses its fluidity.
Why is fluidity important?
Because a sperm needs a highly fluid membrane to successfully fuse with the outer layer of the egg. A Mediterranean-style diet heavy in extra virgin olive oil, wild-caught fish, walnuts, and legumes provides the exact biochemical raw materials the testes need to construct resilient, fluid cellular membranes.
And it provides antioxidants, too.
Exactly. It simultaneously provides dietary antioxidants to neutralize those free radicals.
You're feeding the assembly line the correct raw materials. Which brings us to the targeted supplements. The literature specifically highlights 2 nutraceuticals for boosting sperm energy production and antioxidant defense: CoQ10 and carnitines.
Yes, 2 of the most studied ones.
So if L-carnitine is the fuel truck shuttling the fatty acids into the sperm's mitochondria, CoQ10 is the spark plug that actually ignites it to create the ATP energy required for forward motility.
That is an excellent mechanistic breakdown.
Thanks.
Multiple meta-analyses show that CoQ10 acts as a potent fat-soluble antioxidant within the mitochondrial membrane, essentially protecting the engine from its own exhaust.
I love that visual.
Yeah, and simultaneously, L-carnitine and acetyl L-carnitine significantly improve forward motility and structural morphology by optimizing that energy transport.
Hearing that, my immediate instinct as a listener is to log onto the internet, buy the highest megadose of CoQ10 and L-carnitine I can legally purchase, and just take them by the handful.
Please don't do that.
Can I just go buy these off the shelf and DIY this?
You absolutely should not DIY this, and honestly, this is where many men sabotage their own progress. There is a physiological phenomenon called reductive stress.
Reductive stress.
Yes, if you flood your system with massive, arbitrary doses of synthetic antioxidants, you can actually shut down vital cellular signaling pathways that rely on low levels of free radicals to function. You paralyze the system.
So the dose makes the poison, or in this case, the medicine.
Dosing requires strict individualization. Your current medications, your baseline metabolic blood work, and your specific semen parameters dictate the intervention. Clinical environments do not guess. They utilize targeted dosages based on your unique biochemical profile.
We've covered the lifestyle triage, the structural diet, and the specific supplemental mechanics. But the Berkeley Center's protocols combine these foundational pieces with integrative medicine, specifically acupuncture and customized herbal medicine.
Yes, it's a very stacked approach.
Okay, I have to stop you there and push back a little. We just spent 20 minutes talking about lipid bilayers, oxidative stress, and mitochondrial ATP production. Now you're telling me sticking tiny needles in my skin is going to fix my fragmented DNA.
I know.
As a listener, that sounds like a massive leap. Walk me through the actual biological mechanism there.
It sounds counterintuitive until you look at the neurology and the vascular system. The tests are heavily innervated by the sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response.
Right.
When you're under chronic stress, the sympathetic tone is perpetually elevated, which constricts blood vessels. Systematic reviews of randomized controlled trials, specifically rigorous studies conducted by researchers like Dr. S. Dieterl and Dr. U.M. Zhengsheng, show that targeted acupuncture downregulates the sympathetic nervous system.
So it acts as a neurological circuit breaker.
Precisely. It forces the blood vessels to dilate. This massive influx of fresh, oxygen-rich blood into the pelvic cavity flushes out the accumulated reactive oxygen species and lowers the local tissue temperature.
Oh, wow.
The clinical trials show that this specific microcirculatory change correlates with statistically significant improvements in forward motility, concentration, and most importantly, profound reductions in sperm DNA fragmentation.
Because you are actively flushing away the biological rust before it can shatter the genetic zip file.
Yes, and that physiological shift is sustained through customized herbal medicine. True clinical herbalism does not involve generic fertility teas.
Right. It's not just grabbing a box at the grocery store.
Not at all. Board-certified practitioners use concentrated botanical formulas as biochemical modulators. If a patient's primary issue is metabolic inflammation, the formula targets inflammatory cytokines. If the issue is chronic fatigue, the formula targets adaptogenic stress pathways. It's highly specific, rigorously quality controlled, and objectively tracked.
So what does this all mean? When you look at the totality of this data, it becomes glaringly obvious that there is no singular magic bullet.
There rarely is.
You can't just take a CoQ10 pill and ignore the fact that your laptop is cooking your lap for 10 hours a day. It is the stacking of these interventions.
Yes, the stacking is everything.
It's the neurological reset of the acupuncture, stacked with the biochemical modulation of the herbs, stacked with the mitochondrial support of the supplements, fueled by the structural fats of the diet, all operating in an environment completely free of heat and smoke.
That is the core philosophy of integrative reproductive medicine. It is the creation of a comprehensive, tightly controlled biological ecosystem sustained for the exact 90-day window required for a germ cell to mature into a fully functional delivery vehicle.
If you want to look at the clinical data and protocols driving this stacked approach, the Berkeley Center for Reproductive Wellness actually manages this exact integrative method.
They do incredible work.
They operate their physical clinic in New York City at 16 East 40th Street, but they also manage remote consults nationally and internationally. You can dive deeper into their specific metrics by calling 212-685-0985 or by visiting berkeleycenter.com. It is a powerful reminder that the lab report you are holding is a reflection of the past, not a life sentence for your future.
This raises an important question, though, one that echoes far beyond the scope of reproductive health.
What's that?
If a strictly regimented, customized 90-day window can fundamentally rebuild the microscopic structural integrity and genetic payload of human reproduction, what other seemingly fixed aspects of your biological baseline are actually just waiting for the right 90-day environment to completely regenerate?
Wow, what a thought to leave on. Maybe none of our grades are quite as permanent as we think they are. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep challenging your baselines, and we will catch you next time.